Easy, hero. We know you can't run with that metal leg, so why don't you just hand over your wallet and keys like a good soldier?
Okay, it's nothing. Just calm down.
Disabled Navy SEAL robbed at gas station. Then his team turned it into a sting operation. The fluorescent lights of the QuickStop gas station cast harsh shadows across the Virginia Beach parking lot as former Navy SEAL Danny Torres limped toward the store entrance, his prosthetic leg clicking against the pavement with each step, a sound that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. In the 3 years since the IED in Fallujah had ended his military career, but not his warrior spirit. At 29, he moved with the calculated precision of someone who had learned to navigate a world that saw his disability as weakness. Rather than evidence of sacrifice, his tactical mind still sharp, despite the physical limitations that forced him to approach every situation with a kind of strategic thinking that had once kept his SEAL team alive in hostile territory. The late-night fuel stop should have been routine, but as Danny reached for the door handle, 3 men in hoodies emerged from the shadows with the predatory confidence of hunters who believed they had found easy prey. What they didn't know was that attacking a SEAL, even a disabled one, was like poking a sleeping dragon, and the response would demonstrate why the brotherhood forged in combat never truly ends. A SEAL is never truly alone. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. Well, what do we have here? The voice cut through the humid Virginia night as 3 men surrounded Danny Torres near the gas station entrance, their eyes fixed on his prosthetic leg like predators who had identified wounded prey. The leader's gold teeth glinted under the fluorescent lights as he smiled with cruel anticipation. Danny Torres had faced Taliban fighters, survived IED explosions, and earned his trident through the crucible of SEAL training, but nothing had prepared him for being seen as a victim in his own country. The leg he'd lost serving his nation had become a target painted on his back for cowards who mistook sacrifice for weakness. What happened next would prove that some mistakes have consequences that echo through brotherhood networks spanning the globe, and that the most dangerous thing about a wounded SEAL isn't his disability. It's the teammates who will move heaven and earth to protect him. Virginia Beach sprawled along the Atlantic coast, where military bases and civilian neighborhoods created a complex ecosystem of veterans, active duty personnel, and the predators who had learned to exploit the wounded warriors returning from America's longest wars. The QuickStop station sat in a gray zone between worlds, close enough to Naval Station Norfolk to serve military families, but far enough into the urban sprawl to attract the kind of criminal element that police patrols avoided after midnight. The harsh fluorescent lighting created islands of false security in an area where security cameras were more for insurance than protection, and where the night shift clerk had learned to keep his head down and his questions to himself. This was the hunting ground for a new breed of predator criminals who specifically targeted disabled veterans, believing that physical limitations made them easy marks for robbery, assault, and worse. Danny Torres had enlisted in the Navy straight out of high school, driven by a grandfather who had stormed the beaches of Normandy and a father who had served in Vietnam. The path to becoming a SEAL had been brutal. Hell Week had nearly broken him, but the brotherhood he found in Team 3 had rebuilt him into something stronger than he had ever imagined possible. 3 tours in Afghanistan had forged bonds that transcended normal friendship, creating a family of warriors who would die before abandoning each other. The IED that ended Danny's military career had also ended his marriage, as his wife struggled to cope with his injuries and the PTSD that followed him home like a shadow. He now worked as a defense contractor training new SEALs while fighting phantom pain and the isolation that came with civilian life. His apartment was sparse and functional, decorated only with photos of his fallen teammates and the trident that reminded him of who he had been before the explosion changed everything. What made Danny extraordinary wasn't just his military training, but his ability to adapt and overcome obstacles that would have destroyed lesser men. His tactical mind had adjusted to his physical limitations, creating new strategies for survival that incorporated his prosthetic leg as both vulnerability and potential weapon. Most importantly, he maintained daily contact with his SEAL brothers through encrypted communications that kept the Brotherhood alive across continents and time zones. The challenge Danny faced was more complex than simple personal safety. He was confronting a criminal element that had systematically targeted disabled veterans across the Hampton Roads area, turning their sacrifices into vulnerabilities that could be exploited for profit. The robbery he was about to experience wasn't random. It was part of a pattern that had been terrorizing the military community for months. The stakes extended beyond individual victimization to encompass the broader question of whether those who had served their country would be protected by the society they had defended. Danny's response would determine not just his own fate, but the message sent to every predator who saw disabled veterans as easy targets. His decision to fight back would activate a network of brotherhood that spanned the globe, proving that while individual SEALs might face challenges alone, the team never abandoned its own, regardless of the uniform they wore or the battles they had already fought. The moment that would change everything came when Danny recognized the positioning and body language of the three men surrounding him. This wasn't a random mugging, but a coordinated attack by predators who had studied their prey and chosen their moment carefully. His SEAL training kicked in immediately, his tactical mind cataloging threats and opportunities even as his heart rate remained steady and his movements stayed calm. "Easy there, hero," the leader said, his voice carrying the cruel confidence of someone who had done this before. "We know you can't run with that metal leg, so why don't you just hand over your wallet and keys like a good little soldier?" The words hit Danny like a physical blow, not because of their cruelty, but because they revealed the systematic nature of the attack. These weren't opportunistic criminals. They were specialists who had studied disabled veterans and developed tactics specifically designed to exploit their vulnerabilities. Danny's response was immediate and tactical. He activated his phone's emergency recording function with a subtle gesture while positioning himself to minimize the attacker's advantages. "You got it," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "No trouble here." But even as he complied with their demands, Danny was making a decision that would change the trajectory of his life and the lives of every veteran like him. He was going to make sure these predators faced justice no matter what it cost him personally. The strategy that formed in Danny's mind was both simple and dangerous. Allow the robbery to proceed while gathering intelligence that could identify the perpetrators and their methods, then use his SEAL network to coordinate a response that would dismantle their entire operation. The plan required him to appear helpless while maintaining tactical awareness, to submit to humiliation while building the case that would ultimately destroy them. His preparation was subtle but comprehensive. The phone recording would capture voices and conversations, while his trained observation skills documented physical characteristics, vehicle information, and behavioral patterns that would be crucial for identification. Most importantly, he managed to send a coded text to his former teammate, Marcus Reaper Williams. Package compromised. Possible follow-up required. Stand by. The message was written in the shorthand that SEALs used for tactical communication, and Marcus would understand immediately that Danny was in trouble and needed backup. The Brotherhood network that had been built over years of combat deployments would activate within minutes, bringing resources and expertise that no local police department could match. This isn't about revenge, Danny thought as he handed over his wallet and keys. This is about intelligence gathering and tactical response. These guys picked the wrong target. The criminal saw his compliance as weakness, but Danny knew it was actually the first phase of an operation that would demonstrate why attacking a SEAL, disabled or not, was a mistake that would have consequences extending far beyond their imagination. The intelligence gathering. Danny's first tactical success came when the robbery proceeded exactly as he had hoped, with the attackers revealing information about their methods, their previous victims, and their plans for future attacks. The recording captured not just the immediate crime, but damaging admissions about their systematic targeting of disabled veterans. "This is the easiest money in the world," one of the attackers said while rifling through Danny's wallet. "These broken soldiers can't fight back, can't run, and they're too proud to report it. We hit 3 more this week, and they all just took it like good little victims." The callous assessment was exactly what Danny needed: evidence of a criminal conspiracy that extended far beyond this single incident. The recording also captured partial license plate information from their getaway vehicle and physical descriptions that would be crucial for law enforcement. But the most important intelligence came from their casual reference to future targets, suggesting that the attacks were being coordinated by someone with access to military medical records and disability information. This wasn't street crime, it was organized criminal activity with inside information. "See you around, Gimp," the leader said as they prepared to leave. "Try not to trip on that fancy leg." The insult was the final piece of evidence Danny needed to justify what came next. The first breakthrough came when Danny shared his recording with Detective Sarah Chin of the Virginia Beach Police Department, revealing that his robbery was part of a systematic campaign targeting disabled veterans throughout the Hampton Roads region. The criminal's casual references to previous victims and future plans suggested an organized operation with inside knowledge of military medical facilities and disability benefit schedules. "This isn't random street crime," Chen told Danny during their first meeting. "This is organized predation that requires intelligence gathering and coordination." The situation escalated when Danny's SEAL Team 3 brothers began converging on Virginia Beach, each bringing specialized skills that transformed a simple robbery investigation into a precision intelligence operation. Marcus Reaper Williams brought surveillance expertise. Tommy Ghost Rodriguez provided electronic warfare capabilities, and Jake Bulldog Peterson contributed urban warfare tactics. "We're not just here for Danny," Reaper explained during their first coordination meeting. "We're here for every veteran who's been targeted because some predator thinks being wounded makes us weak. The major escalation came when the team's investigation revealed that the attacks were being coordinated by a criminal organization with connections to corrupt medical personnel who provided information about disabled veterans' schedules, benefits, and vulnerabilities. The robbery that targeted Danny was just one incident in a network of crimes that had been carefully planned and executed by people who understood military culture and exploited it for profit. They're not just criminals, Ghost reported. They're running a business model based on targeting people who sacrificed for their country. The pressure intensified when media attention focused on the systematic targeting of disabled veterans, creating public outrage that demanded immediate action from law enforcement agencies that had been overwhelmed by the scope and sophistication of the criminal operation. The story of Danny's robbery became a catalyst for broader investigations that revealed similar patterns in military communities across the country. This is bigger than Virginia Beach, Detective Chen explained during a joint briefing with federal agents. We're looking at a criminal enterprise that spans multiple states and specifically targets our most vulnerable veterans. The FBI's involvement brought resources and authority that local police couldn't provide, but it also created jurisdictional complications that threatened to slow the investigation when time was critical. The criminals had demonstrated their ability to adapt and relocate their operations, making rapid response essential for preventing additional attacks. Danny's personal stakes. For Danny, the investigation had become personal in ways that extended beyond his own victimization. The systematic targeting of disabled veterans represented an attack on everything he had fought for during his military service, the protection of those who couldn't protect themselves, and the honor of those who had sacrificed for their country. The transformation in Danny's approach came when he realized that his disability wasn't a limitation, but a tactical advantage that could be used to infiltrate and destroy the criminal organization. His visible prosthetic leg made him an attractive target for predators who underestimated his capabilities, while his SEAL training gave him skills that no street criminal could match. I've been thinking about this all wrong, Danny told his teammates during a strategy session. I've been seeing my leg as a weakness, but to these criminals, it's what makes me valuable as bait. We can use their prejudice against them. The psychological breakthrough was as important as the tactical one. Danny's acceptance of his disability as a weapon rather than a limitation marked his transition from victim to hunter, from someone who had been acted upon to someone who was taking action. His teammates recognized the change immediately. This was the Danny Torres they had fought beside in Afghanistan, the tactician who could turn any disadvantage into an opportunity. Now, you're thinking like a SEAL again, Reaper observed. Let's hunt these bastards. The investigation reached a critical juncture when the team discovered that the criminal organization was planning to escalate their operations, moving from simple robbery to more violent crimes that would put disabled veterans at risk of serious injury or death. Intelligence gathered from multiple sources suggested that the group was under pressure from larger criminal organizations to increase their profits, leading to more aggressive tactics. They're not satisfied with just stealing wallets anymore, Ghost reported during an emergency briefing. Our sources indicate they're planning home invasions, kidnappings, and worse. They see disabled veterans as a resource to be exploited, not people to be respected. The timeline was accelerating beyond what law enforcement could handle through traditional methods. The criminal organization had established patterns and territories that would take months to dismantle through conventional investigation, but disabled veterans were being targeted every day. The operation continued. "We need to force them into the open," Danny concluded, "and I know exactly how to do it." The plan that emerged would require Danny to put himself at risk one more time, but this time he would be surrounded by his brothers and backed by the full resources of federal law enforcement. The disabled SEAL who had been seen as easy prey was about to become the bait that would destroy the entire criminal network. The crisis reached its peak when Danny volunteered to serve as bait in a coordinated sting operation that would draw the criminal organization into a trap where they could be captured with overwhelming evidence of their crimes. The plan was audacious and dangerous, requiring Danny to put himself at risk while his SEAL teammates provided overwatch and support from positions that would allow them to intervene if the situation went wrong. "This is insane," Detective Chen said during the final briefing at the Joint Law Enforcement Command Center. "We're asking a disabled veteran to deliberately make himself a target for criminals who have already demonstrated their willingness to use violence." Danny's response revealed the depth of his commitment to protecting his fellow veterans. These predators have been hunting disabled veterans for months, and they won't stop until someone stops them. "I'm not going to let other people suffer because I was too afraid to take a risk." The operation would unfold at a predetermined location, a shopping center parking lot, where Danny would appear to be alone and vulnerable while actually being surrounded by some of the most skilled warriors in the world. The criminals had taken the bait, responding to intelligence that suggested a high-value target would be conducting a routine evening transaction. But as the operation began, Danny found himself facing not just the three men who had robbed him, but a larger criminal organization that included armed enforcers and a leadership structure that had been systematically targeting military families throughout the region. The stakes had escalated beyond simple robbery to include violent crime that could result in serious injury or death. "Overwatch 1, this is bait," Danny whispered into his concealed microphone. "I count 6 tangos, at least 3 armed. This is bigger than we anticipated." The situation descended into nightmare when the criminal organization's leader revealed that they had identified Danny as the source of the investigation and had planned this encounter as an execution rather than a robbery. The discovery that his identity had been compromised transformed the sting operation from a controlled takedown into a fight for survival. "You thought you were clever, didn't you, SEAL boy?" the leader said, his voice carrying the cold confidence of someone who believed he held all the advantages. "We know exactly who you are and what you've been doing. You've cost us a lot of money, and tonight you're going to pay for it." The revelation that his cover had been blown was devastating. But the greater danger came from the realization that the criminal organization had resources and intelligence capabilities that far exceeded what law enforcement had anticipated. They had identified not just Danny, but potentially his entire support network, putting his SEAL brothers at risk. This was supposed to be a simple robbery, Danny thought as he assessed the tactical situation. But these guys have turned it into an assassination. I may have walked into a trap that I can't get out of. The weapons that the criminals displayed were military grade, and their positioning suggested professional training that was far beyond typical street crime. Danny found himself facing enemies who had studied his methods and prepared countermeasures that could neutralize his advantages. "You know what the best part is," the leader continued. "We're going to make this look like a disabled veteran who couldn't handle civilian life. Another tragic suicide that nobody will question, because everyone knows how hard it is for you broken soldiers to adjust." The moment that changed everything came when Danny made a decision that would either save his life or end it. He stopped pretending to be helpless and started acting like the SEAL he had always been, regardless of his physical limitations. The transformation was immediate and deadly, as years of combat training overrode the civilian conditioning that had made him vulnerable. "You made one mistake," Danny said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had faced death before and wasn't afraid to face it again. "You assumed that losing a leg made me less dangerous, but what it really did was give me nothing left to lose." The response from his support team was immediate and overwhelming. "This is Reaper," came the voice through his earpiece. "We have you covered. All stations, the package is compromised. Execute, execute, execute." The parking lot that had seemed empty suddenly erupted with the coordinated movement of elite warriors who had been positioned to respond to exactly this situation. The criminals who had thought they were executing a disabled veteran found themselves facing the most skilled and dangerous military unit in the world, with every escape route blocked and every advantage neutralized. "Welcome to the other side of the hunt," Danny whispered as his brothers closed in on their targets. The culmination of the sting operation required split-second coordination between Danny's SEAL teammates and federal law enforcement agents who had been positioned around the parking lot in overlapping fields of fire that would ensure no criminal could escape while minimizing risk to civilian bystanders. The preparation had been meticulous and professional, with each team member assigned specific sectors of responsibility and rules of engagement that would ensure the operation remained legally justifiable. "All stations, this is command," came Detective Chen's voice over the tactical communication system. "Suspects are armed and have threatened the asset. You are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to protect the target and secure the scene." The response from Danny's brothers was immediate and professional. Reaper in position, north sector clear. Ghost in position, electronic warfare active. Bulldog in position, south approach secured. Each SEAL was positioned to respond to any threat while ensuring that the criminals had no escape routes and no opportunity to harm Danny or any potential witnesses. The coordination between military and civilian law enforcement was seamless, demonstrating the kind of cooperation that was possible when professionals worked together toward a common goal that transcended jurisdictional boundaries and bureaucratic limitations. The tension reached its maximum when the criminal organization's leader ordered his men to execute Danny, triggering a response that would demonstrate why SEALs were considered the most elite warriors in the world. The countdown to action was measured in heartbeats as Danny's support team prepared to engage multiple armed targets in a crowded civilian environment. "Kill him," the leader commanded, his words captured by recording devices that would provide evidence for prosecution while also serving as the signal for defensive action. "Make it look like suicide and let's get out of here." The weapons that appeared in the criminals' hands were met immediately by the overwhelming firepower of professionals who had been trained to respond to exactly this kind of threat. The tactical advantage held by the criminals' numbers, positioning, and surprise was negated instantly by the superior training and coordination of the SEAL team. "This is Reaper," came the voice through the tactical communication system. "Targets are armed and engaging. All stations weapons free. Protect the asset." The parking lot that had been quiet seconds before erupted into controlled chaos as the most skilled warriors in the world engaged criminal targets with the kind of precision that had made them legendary among special operations forces. The takedown began with Ghost's electronic warfare capabilities disabling the criminals' communications and vehicles, preventing escape, while ensuring that their weapons and coordination were compromised from the first moment of contact. The attack was swift and overwhelming, with each SEAL moving with the fluid precision that had been developed through years of combat operations in the world's most dangerous environments. "Targets neutralized North Sector," came Reaper's voice as the first wave of criminals found themselves facing professionals who had been trained to handle exactly this kind of situation. The speed and coordination of the response was beyond anything the criminals had anticipated, transforming their planned execution into a demonstration of why attacking a SEAL was a mistake that would have fatal consequences. Danny's role in the operation shifted from passive bait to active participant as he used his tactical training to coordinate with his support team while providing intelligence about the remaining threats. His disability, which the criminals had seen as weakness, now became an advantage as he moved through the chaos with the kind of tactical awareness that only came from years of combat experience. The situation escalated when the criminal organization's leader made a desperate attempt to escape by taking a civilian hostage, forcing the SEAL team to adjust their tactics to protect innocent life while maintaining their operational objectives. The complication tested every skill they had developed in hostage rescue operations, requiring precision and coordination that left no room for error. "We have a hostage situation," Bulldog reported through the tactical communication system. "Civilian female, unknown age, between me and primary target. Request guidance." The response from Danny was immediate and tactical. "Maintain position and await clear shot. Do not engage until you have confirmation that the hostage is clear. We don't leave anyone behind, and we don't sacrifice innocent people for tactical advantage." The situation required patience and precision that were beyond the capabilities of most tactical teams. But these were SEALs who had been trained to handle the most complex and dangerous operations in the world. The hostage situation that would have complicated law enforcement operations was just another tactical challenge for warriors who had spent years perfecting their skills. The decisive moment came when Danny made the choice that would end the operation and demonstrate why disabled veterans were far from helpless when they had the support of their brothers. Using his prosthetic leg as a weapon, he disabled the criminal leader while his teammates moved to secure the remaining targets with a kind of coordinated precision that had made them legendary. "Target down," Danny reported, as the criminal who had threatened his life found himself facing the reality that underestimating a SEAL was a mistake that would have permanent consequences. "Primary threat neutralized. Scene is secure." The takedown was completed in less than 3 minutes from start to finish, with all criminals captured alive and all evidence preserved for prosecution. The operation had been a master class in tactical coordination and precision execution that would be studied in military academies and law enforcement training programs for years to come. "This is what happens when you target the wrong people," Danny said as he looked at the criminals who had been systematically preying on disabled veterans. "We don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for every veteran who has ever been told they're not worth protecting." The successful completion of the sting operation was measured not just in arrests, but in the dismantling of a criminal organization that had been terrorizing the military community for months. The evidence gathered during the operation led to the conviction of 17 individuals on charges ranging from armed robbery to organized crime conspiracy, with sentences that would keep them in prison for decades. "You did it," Detective Chen told Danny, as the scene was secured and the criminals were transported to holding facilities. "You took a network that had been untouchable and gave us everything we needed to destroy them completely." The victory was personal for Danny, who had transformed from victim to hunter through the support of his brothers and the strength of the bonds forged in combat. The disabled SEAL, who had been seen as easy prey, had become the instrument of justice that would protect countless other veterans from similar attacks. The immediate consequences of the successful operation extended far beyond the arrests to create a new model for protecting disabled veterans and coordinating between military and civilian law enforcement. The techniques developed during the investigation became standard procedures for addressing threats against former service members, while the coordination between the SEAL team and federal agents created templates for future operations. Danny's courage in serving as bait for the operation was recognized with commendations from military and civilian authorities. But the recognition he valued most came from his fellow veterans who understood that his sacrifice had made them all safer. The immediate aftermath of the sting operation created ripple effects that extended far beyond Virginia Beach to influence how law enforcement agencies throughout the country approached crimes against disabled veterans. The successful coordination between Danny's SEAL team and federal authorities became a model for similar operations, demonstrating that military expertise could be effectively integrated with civilian law enforcement to address threats that crossed traditional jurisdictional boundaries. Within weeks of the operation, 17 members of the criminal organization had been convicted on charges ranging from armed robbery to organized crime conspiracy, with sentences that would keep them in prison for decades. The evidence gathered during the sting operation was so comprehensive that most defendants accepted plea agreements rather than face trial, ensuring swift justice for the victims they had terrorized. Danny's story inspired similar operations in military communities across the country, with veteran organizations and law enforcement agencies developing protocols for addressing the systematic targeting of disabled veterans. The success of the operation proved that the skills developed in military service could be effectively applied to civilian challenges. The long-term impact of Danny's courage extended beyond law enforcement to reshape how society viewed disabled veterans and their continued value to their communities. The operation demonstrated that physical disabilities didn't diminish the tactical thinking, leadership, and brotherhood that had made these men elite warriors during their active service. The Torres Protocol became the official designation for operations that combined veteran networks with law enforcement resources, creating a new model for addressing threats against former service members. The protocol was implemented in military communities nationwide, leading to the identification and prosecution of criminal organizations that had been operating with impunity for years. Danny's transformation from victim to advocate made him a sought-after speaker at veteran organizations and law enforcement conferences, where he shared his story of how brotherhood and determination could overcome any obstacle. His message resonated with audiences who understood that true strength wasn't measured by physical capability, but by the courage to face adversity and the wisdom to know that no one had to face it alone. The operation also influenced military policy, with the Department of Defense implementing new programs to help transitioning veterans maintain connections with their brothers and access resources that could protect them from exploitation during their most vulnerable periods. Danny's personal transformation was profound and lasting. The man who had once seen his disability as a burden discovered that his greatest strength lay not in what he had lost, but in what he had gained: the unbreakable bonds with his SEAL brothers and the knowledge that his service continued long after his military career had ended. 5 years after the operation, Danny continues his work training new SEALs, while serving as a reminder that the brotherhood forged in combat extends far beyond active duty. His prosthetic leg had become a symbol not of limitation, but of resilience, proving that true warriors were defined by their character rather than their physical capabilities. Danny's story became a powerful testament to the enduring strength of military brotherhood and the truth that no veteran ever fights alone. His legacy lives on in every operation that protects disabled veterans, and every moment when his fellow SEALs remember that their greatest mission is protecting each other. A SEAL is never truly alone. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. Danny tells each new group of trainees, knowing that the lesson extends far beyond combat, to encompass every challenge that life might present to those who have served their country.